All right. Shall we just kick it off?
Yep, might as well.
Might as well. All right. So, Icon Blockchain weekly infrastructure call. Number one, this is the first one. Planning on trying to do this at least once a week, if not twice a week, knowing that there's people who are going to be interested from around the globe. 6 o'clock in the morning UTC is not necessarily the best time for everybody. So we'll talk a little bit about trying to coordinate that. I'll put up some more polls on the Telegram to try to make sure that we can coordinate some times where everybody can join in, and then we can start to parse out which concepts are most suitable for each call. But I'm pretty sure that this call, which is the first, will evolve into sort of a bi-weekly kind of call in the future. So first off, I thought that it was appropriate to put up a little community guidelines for the calls, because this election is going on. There's obviously some inherent competition going on between all of the different teams, and I just figured that this would be important to sort of paste up here because just to make sure that we have a good community going on. So first off, using welcoming and inclusive language, being respectful of differing viewpoints and experiences, gracefully accepting constructive criticism, showing empathy towards other in the communities, and focusing on what is best for the community. And I highlighted that one because really what we're building here is the infrastructure for everybody. And so there's a lot of, with all the competition between all the teams and everything like that, there's a lot of people trying to one up in everybody. And really when it comes down to it, this infrastructure is something that we're all gonna have to live with, and we're all gonna have to be helpful of one another to be able to build. So really we need to be focusing on what's best for the community here, because we're building the infrastructure that's hopefully going to be supporting the whole ecosystem as it evolves. Also, P-reps need to represent a diverse set of strengths. And so there's a lot of different P-reps that are handling different sorts of topics. We definitely have P-reps who are more focused in finance, other P-reps that are focused on application development, and then other candidates such as Insight who are really focused on infrastructure and data analysis and things like that. But this is not a forum where we're trying to just sort of say, that it's all about infrastructure. I just wanted to really make sure to make a point at the beginning that we're trying to build a community with all the different skill sets that we need. And so this is just infrastructure. This is just one part of the much broader community that we're trying to build, right? And network is only as strong as the weakest link. I can't emphasize that enough. We'll get into a little bit of that later, but we need to make sure that all P-reps are up to spec, because if a couple P-reps get DOSed or taken over, it can really spell some really bad situations for the rest of the network. So that's why I really want to make sure that everybody is running high spec nodes, high security, and we're doing all of this right. And most importantly, we're all in this together, and I can't emphasize that enough. So a little agenda. I'll be honest, I threw this presentation together, I don't want to say last minute, but this is supposed to be a very informal presentation here. I don't actually even really want this to be just me talking the entire time. I've got stuff that I could talk for hours about, and I'm not really trying to turn this into a forum where I'm just sort of talking to myself. I'm trying to really get everybody engaged, starting to post some feedback, ask questions. This is supposed to be really, really, really informal. So please jump in, ask questions about anything that you don't understand. If there's any concerns you have, anything, please just sort of jump in. So on that, as far as an agenda, I'd like to go through some intros. It's really only Insight right now that I know it's here. I know iBriz is here. I should really share this presentation with everybody so people can just jump in as well. I just want to quickly make sure as well, there's an agenda. If you guys have any, I'm going to put this in the Telegram in the testnet channel. So anybody wants to put any notes for anything, just paste it down here in the TDD. It's in the testnet channel right now. I guess I can post it in the PREP channel as well. And so if you have anything that you would like to raise during the call, we'll kind of thought back and forth between this and try to make sure that we address all kind of questions if there's something that you want to bring up later or whatever, or just interrupt the conversation and just tell us, because we're trying to just make this informal. So go through some intros, any burning questions anybody has. Obviously, if you guys been paying attention to the Telegram chat, big change in timeline announced tonight. So with the whole mainnet delay, so we'll talk a little bit about that. And then I want to drive into some of our duties, because like it's easy to sort of get distracted from all the different things that we need to be doing to support the ecosystem. Infrastructure, like I mentioned, is just one of them. But I really want to drill into what it means to drive infrastructure forward and what we need to do. And really that's all going to boil down to, as well as test nets and how we're going to be able to test our infrastructure to build it better. Then just sort of some housekeeping stuff. We should talk a little bit about issue tracking, documentation, things like that. And then this is, I've got a lot of material set up, and so I don't know where we want to go with all of this, but I could talk, like I said, I could talk about infrastructure for hours. And so I just want to sort of set the table with what it means to write infrastructure as code and why we do that and why that is the way to go. And then we'll talk about one-click provisioning, some of the components, the different configurations, how we do that, and then kind of sum it up at the end with a demo, and we'll actually deploy some infrastructure and see how that works. And I'm expecting at sort of like the end of the call that we'll just sort of be just hopefully a little bit all over the place, and we're sort of addressing questions and we're all talking and discussing things together. But on that, some intros. I only have Insight on over here because I know some of my team members are going to be there, but I know Ibers is here. I can't see who's in the chat, but I was just planning on introducing myself and some of the other people in the team. And then anybody else from the teams like Ibers, please jump in and let us know who you are. You guys are definitely contributing and helping us out, and I want to highlight some of that. So anyways, myself, my name is Rob. I am the guy behind the repo for Insight, Rob CIO, doing most of the infrastructure stuff at the moment. I'm also leading our team of fellows. If you're not familiar with Insight Data Science, we're classified as a higher education organization. We take highly skilled fellows from different backgrounds who have a strength in computer science to do a fellowship for about 7 weeks to 3 months, depending on the program that they're in. And during that time, they do a project to demonstrate their skills, and then from there, they apply to companies. So we're sort of like this middle step in between either a school or some kind of job transition into getting into a job in data science specifically, and all the ancillary sort of skill sets needed to be able to execute on that. John, do you want to jump in next, because you're the program director for DevOps?
Yeah. So hi everyone, my name is John Taylor. Like Rob was saying, I am the program director for the Silicon Valley DevOps Fellowship. Essentially, as a program director, I am the product owner for the DevOps product. So that comes down to doing outreach to get great fellows like Rob, interfacing with our alumni community, as well as interfacing with our business partners to kind of build that mesh between super talented folks and equally talented technical teams that are looking for good people. And I'm super excited to participate in this. And I just kind of want to shout Rob out because he's done such a great job of bringing this community together and championing Insight's contributions.
Yeah, anybody else want to jump in? I know that Richard's here. Richard, do you want to jump in? I don't know how, I can't see how many people are in the chat. So
You got to click on participants.
Participants, let's see where that is. Okay. Where's that? Participants. I can't see. Somebody want to jump in though and introduce their team, where they're coming from?
Sosan, go ahead.
My name is Sosan. Like Rob and John mentioned, I am a DevOps engineering fellow at Insight Data for the current cohort, and I have been closely working with Rob on security hardening of the Insight PREP node and the Citizen node infrastructure. So nice to meet you all. Thank you.
Hello?
Yep.
Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
Hey, sorry, I just dropped out for a second, so not sure what I missed. I'm Mr. Kravitz Thayer. I run our blockchain engineering program at Insight, and started working with Monero Research Lab a couple years ago. Came over to Insight about a year ago. Started building out a relationship with the foundation, the Icon Foundation, actually back in October of last year. So I've been very keenly following this, super excited to watch this kind of come together over the course of the last 10, 11 months. And yeah, it was really great. I'm super glad that I was able to connect with Rob early on in the program and start getting this kicked off. I just want to say thanks again to Rob for coordinating this, all your hard work, writing the code, mentoring the team, and getting this call rolling. So I'll try to stay tuned in. I am kind of passing out in bed, so apologies if I nod off, but thank you much.
Last but not least, Dr. Ma, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm Richard. I'm also a DevOps fellow with Insight. I'm working on a monitoring and alerting platform for the framework that we're building. So, yeah.
Anybody from iBriz want to introduce yourselves? Because you guys are a quality team. I've been working with Raju. You guys there?
Hi, I'm Sagat from iBriz. I look over the operations of DevOps for Team iBriz. I'm a blockchain developer. I have been observing everything you guys have been doing, and you guys have been doing very great. I'm very grateful for working with you guys. That will be all.
Cool.
Nice to meet
you. Yeah, Raju has been awesome, by the way. Yeah, hopefully he's on this call because I gotta sort of point out some things that he'll be jumping into.
I'm sorry that Raju is busy currently in other stuff that we have been working upon, and he won't be able to attend the call.
Got it. I'll plug him anyways because he's been awesome. Yeah. Anybody else?
Hi guys. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I'm Chris. We are Block32, PREP candidate from Austria, Europe. So just want to quick introduce us. We are kind of a small team right now, but we are very tech focused. My personal background is from the tech side. I started computer science, and I'm also a serial entrepreneur. So we also already started a few companies successfully, and yeah, we're with Icon since the ICO, and now we are happy to help out as a peer.
Cool. Nice to meet you. Anybody else want to jump in? I'll take that as no. That's fine. We can just forge ahead. Anybody got any burning questions right now? There's got to be some, considering that everything changed today. I know I got a few, but they have to do with the next slides. So we can just sort of forge ahead and just sort of do it, because I know there's a million questions that are going to come up.
Yeah, might as well.
So timeline, everything changed today. So I'll just sort of handle this a little bit from the best of my capabilities of understanding this. Mainnet was supposed to launch in 6 days from now, and the Icon Foundation just tonight announced that they'll be delaying Mainnet for another 15 days till October 29th is their new date. The election from what I gathered, is also going to extend that time but also from my understanding, the election really sort of doesn't really end, because we can always be restaking. And so I had questions about that, when we could restake. I don't know if anybody has any clarity on that, and also about when rewards are going to be coming. I'm sure we all want to get paid. But does anybody know specifically when the rewards are supposed to start? I'm guessing it's out sort of like on a monthly basis. Yeah, we'll figure that out. I don't think it's I don't want to say it's not important, but I mean, I think we're all focused on infrastructure right now. So let's just stay on task. Testnet 3. Testnet 3 started about a week ago. I think it was Tuesday last week. And there was Testnet 2 before that, and obviously Testnet 1. And there will be a Testnet 4. And just to be clear, I don't think testnets are going to end. Saga, do you want to jump in?
Raju has just joined from iBrace.
Oh, cool.
If you want something, then he's available right now.
Right.
Yeah. Hi, Rob.
Hey, Raju, what's going on?
Hello. Yeah, it's going good.
You're good.
Yeah, carry on.
Yeah, I can hear you fine. You want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, so hello all. I'm Raju Dawadi from Kathmandu, from Nepal. And I've been engaged as a DevOps for a few projects, and I've been seeing for PREP nodes for iBreeze, and also collaborating with Rob for building the infrastructure, and collaborating to get our infrastructure more better, and using all sorts of infrastructure with Terraform and stuff like that. Yeah, so hello all again.
Yeah, Raju's been great. Yeah, so cool. Glad you're here, Raju. Yeah, so testnet 4, we'll talk a little bit more about that. We need to be, there's a million things we need to do, so there's really not a point to get into it right now. But I wanted to highlight one sort of thing, and to sort of throw this out to the community. But I think we need to be running something like a game of cons, and this is modeled after Cosmos Network's game of stakes. Cosmos, if you're not familiar with it, is they ICO'd, I think, like 6 months ago or like 8 months ago. I'm not exactly sure, but they're supposed to be like an alternative to this Ethereum 2.0 protocol that has been delayed for over a year now, and they're supporting peg zones to be able to bridge the gaps between multiple different cryptocurrencies, and they're also based on Tendermint. I'm pretty sure that Icon is a fork of Tendermint, or at least shares a lot of similarities based on like Byzantine fault tolerance and whatnot. But what's important is I want to start the conversation about us having at Icon our own version of game of stakes, and I've called it game of cons. One of the members of the community called out very appropriately that cons is interpreted in French as stupid, so it would be game of stupids. I don't know if that's the right branding we want to adopt for our own version, but just to drill in what it is, this was the main thing that Cosmos used to be able to prove the integrity of their network. So what it was is they encouraged node operators to basically DOS each other and try to take down the network, and incentivize people such that if they were able to take down the network, they would be rewarded. And I think we need to do something similar over at Icon, because we really need to be able to test our infrastructure, and that'll be a repeating concept in a lot of the things they'll be bringing up. And then also will inform how we plan for different disaster recovery scenarios. The network is going to get hit, like there's just no doubt about it. We need to be able to have like a guideline in place to be able to recover from that. This is the beginning of the call. I don't want to really drill into that much stuff right now, but that's just sort of where I'm sort of thinking, is that like testnet 3, this is all sort of put on by the Icon devs. We want to support them as much as possible, but in the future, we're going to want to have as many testnets as possible, and to be able to take as much of that, well, at least we need to be able to empower the devs as much as possible. And so a lot of that is going to require us building infrastructure on our own, shipping more logs, building in more protections, and just more and more and more and more testing. So I just wanted to plant that seed as a theme because that's going to be pretty much predominant throughout all the different things that we're going to be talking about. PREP duties, again, please, anybody jump in. I just threw this together, but I wanted to be clear about a couple different things. But we are here to support, and I think this is the right order. The network, number one, we have to make sure that when we do go through decentralization, and I'm really glad we didn't go through decentralization next week. I don't think that we were ready. I think it was a very, very smart decision on the devs' part to delay that launch. Really, really, really glad they did that. With the reputational risk of having a failed decentralization attempt is far greater than the risk that we face from just delaying it. You know, there's the delay is just it sucks and people aren't going to get paid sooner, but like, consider the alternative. If the network did go down or something like that, it would just be a disaster. So anyways, number one, we're here to support the network. We're here to make sure that we have as much uptime as possible. Number two, the devs, we need to support the devs as much as possible in developing the protocols, getting shipping the right logs, doing the right test nets, things like that. And then the ecosystem as well. Like certainly I don't know, we're not trying to play politics here at all on anything. But there's definitely a lot of growth that needs to happen on the ecosystem. That's why we need to have a well-balanced group of different PREPs to be able to represent us. So as I mentioned, as close to zero time as possible. I mentioned disaster recovery scenarios. We need to be gaming all of that stuff out. Network security, number one. If we all get, if this network goes down, it's going to be really, really, really bad. So we need to be planning ahead and implementing the greatest security posture possible. Build best practices for all, encourage all, as much citizen node adoption as possible. I'll talk a little bit about that more, but as PREPs, we're going to be maintaining the main validator nodes, but we're hoping that we're going to be growing the ecosystem to support numerous different kinds of application through decentralized applications. All of those decentralized applications are going to need infrastructure, mainly citizen nodes, to be able to back up their applications. And so we're trying to build all that infrastructure out as easy as possible for different DApp infrastructure development. And we really should formalize this. I sort of just threw this up here, but we should have a formal PREP duties sort of page that outlines how all of this stuff needs to be addressed. If anybody, I was going to mention at the beginning of the call, if anybody can take notes, I don't know who's planning on being on the call for the whole entire time, but somebody should take some notes because I'm sure some things are going to bubble up on here, like somebody trying to volunteer with formalizing what these PREP duties are and everything like that. And I'll get into how to do that later, but does somebody want to volunteer?
Wait, I think as long as you publish the recording.
Yeah, let's do it that way. Yeah,
you're already collecting all the.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. Okay, so let's get into it. What we need to do, PREP infrastructure. To be clear, like I wanted to put this slide right up at the beginning because it's really easy to get lost in the weeds of all these different things that we need to build for infrastructure, and there's really just a couple core components that we need to make sure that we have implemented. So for the PREP infrastructure, we need to have alarms in place, fed off of logs and metrics. One of the teams, Pecan Bello, I think that's what they're. How do you pronounce their name? They built a cool app that hits the endpoint continually from each PREP's node to make sure that it's live. So that's just one level of sort of alarms that we'll need. That's like basically on the application layer just to see if it, like a health check basically to see if it's alive. Certainly we're going to need a little bit more than that because before our applications crash, there's going to be some logs that we could potentially interpret to be able to inform how alarms need to take place before the whole thing goes down. Also metrics, like let's just say your CPU is too high or your disk space is running low or things like that. We need to build in alarms based on metrics on the host level to inform when we need to do different kinds of system maintenance and things like that. That will feed through all to like SMS messages, emails, things like that that are going to get our attention so that we can get a node operator on the call. Protections like double signing, I don't think that most teams are, I don't know if any team besides Insight is going to be working on that, but a lot of the infrastructure that we're going to be building, that we're going to be evangelizing on this call, is really to give people like Mitchell the tools that they need to be able to implement double signing protections and things like that, because we need to have access to all those logs and all the different things that we need to be able to build that kind of analysis in place. So lots of different analysis that needs to take place, double signing just one of them. And then the DApp infrastructure, we need to be designing this whole network for scalability, ease of use, support citizen node adoption. I don't know if anybody's checked out Pocket Figment's proposal. They got a really cool proposal up. I don't know how far along they are. They are definitely a very qualified team, but they're planning on building something that once these, I mean, from my interpretation of the proposal, once these citizen nodes are in place and once we've made it easy for a lot of people to be able to deploy these citizen nodes, they'll be able to, their team and teams like them will be able to build different SDKs that developers can easily adopt to be able to build different decentralized applications on top of. But really, I mean, we need to first get ourselves to the point that people are actually running citizen nodes en masse. So there's a lot of different things that can happen at that point. I think Pocket Figment, they got a really cool proposal up that shows how they'll be able to leverage an existing citizen node infrastructure out there. And then testnets, I call it testnet X because this is never going to end. I've gathered some members of the community saying like, oh, well, once we're done with testnet, then we'll just move the decentralization and then everything will be good, right? This is false, because I don't see the testnets ending anytime soon. Ideally, we'd be doing them on a continual basis, and just if that's what the devs need to be able to continually improve their protocols, then that's just what we're going to need to do, and that means testing, retesting, and then test some more. I don't think testing's it's just not going to end anytime soon, and we just need to be building as much testing as possible. Move this. It's a little distracting right here. And then it's up to community up to the community on how often we do these tests, how productive they are, and how easy. Like right now, test nets are pretty, I don't want to say painful. They're very manual. Every single node operator has to get a node configuration up, and really these test nets need to be basically a parallel configuration of what you have going on mainnet. So I really want to make this point really, really strong, and this is sort of why we use infrastructure as code. Very, very, very difficult to maintain parallel node configurations if you're going to be doing things through the console. If you have to point and click at a bunch of things and then run a bunch of shell scripts and make sure you get them in order and do all this manual stuff to get a testnet node configuration up, it's going to be pretty difficult to get testnets up. And so that's fine. There's going to be some node operators that are they're running bare metal, or they're not pixie booting their nodes, or I don't know. I don't want to get into it. You know, for whatever reasons, they're not able to engage in testnets as easily as others. That's fine. There's just going to be node operators who are going to end up stepping up and deploying multiple nodes for testnets to try to get representative infrastructure in place so that we can run a suite of tests against them and things like that. And that's why building your infrastructure with code is so important, because if you have to go into the console and do a bunch of stuff, it's not audible, it's not repeatable. Well, I don't want to say it's not repeatable, but it's painful, it's laborious, and it's gonna really drag down this whole entire testnet process. So just emphasizing, like, look, we can continually do testnets the way that we are, but if we can try to get things smoother, more automated, and simpler to deploy, we're going to be doing them more often. They're going to be more productive, and they're going to be easier. So really want to emphasize that point. And then disaster recovery, I'm going to continually reference this thing. We need to be gaming out every what if, what if somebody gets hacked and then all of a sudden one of our PREP nodes starts trying to DOS our network internally. We need to game that out. And the only way to do that isn't in testnet. We certainly can't do it in mainnet, obviously. So we need to be trying to do everything we possibly can to game out every single situation we can. Anybody got any questions, comments, anything on the slide?
Hey, yeah, actually, that's very interesting. I have a quick thought. So in some of the other projects I've worked on, when you're setting up your node, you can literally just either by command line argument or by clicking, say, oh, I want to set up a testnet, mainnet, or stagenet.
Mm-hmm.
And so for that, the friction is literally nothing. It's just a checkbox. Does it seem like something that could eventually be rolled out with ICON?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're already building that in place. I'm going to do a demo at the end of the presentation to show like specifically what you would need to do to be able to say, oh, I'm developing a citizen node. So you just choose citizen and you're going to run that, versus
Awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be a different configuration, but like with different options that you're going to need to put in place. So for instance, right now, to be able to engage in testnet, you need to have these testnet tokens, which are issued by ICON. And to be able to access them, even to be able to even see them in your wallet, you need to set some variables within the, I forget what it's called, but within your F12.
Yeah, that makes sense. A little bit more complicated.
Yeah.
Cool.
But yeah, you're going to need tokens, and then you're going to need to have a specific wallet to be able to engage in these test nets. So, but it'll all be just like a different option, and I don't want to get into it right now because it's all going to bubble up in the demo.
Cool. I love it. Nice.
Awesome.
Hey, Rob, this is John. Just have a quick question. You might have already answered this, but specifically around testnet, I know you're approaching testnet 3 and obviously future iterations of that. No, well, okay, more so around the mainnet not being ready. Can you just quickly say how or why it wasn't ready? Was it from a, hey, most folks can't launch their nodes perspective?
Yeah, it was a protocol level thing.
Got it. Okay.
I don't want to. I honestly couldn't tell you. I've been keeping my node up and I've been keeping track of my logs from time to time. I'm really just focused on the long term. I don't want to say long term, but I'm just, building out this infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have to talk to other people. Does anybody else know specifically why we haven't, what the reason was? I know that, I just know that when we were doing test nets, that initially when we got our nodes up, that the Docker image that we were running needed to be replaced within like 24 hours or something like that. So I think they did some quick fixes, and then they had us pull another image. I'm not exactly sure. It's just protocol level stuff, and it's expected. We need to be doing 1 million of these test nets, so it's totally fine that things break. We just need to be continually learning from that and improving.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I don't. No judgments on it. These things are complicated, and I'm glad they took the cautious step of delaying it. That's all I can say. All right, so moving on. Future test nets. Collect and ship all logs and metrics. So we're running FluentD as an agent, as a log collection agent, and then we need to ship those logs, and the recommendation is that we ship them to Elasticsearch. That's our centralized logging aggregation, to be able to pull metrics from, and we'll pull logs from both the citizen node and the PREP node and aggregate them in one place. We really, though, need to aggregate them not just from each individual's team's logging infrastructure, but also to a central repository so that the devs can then do queries against those logs and see gain observability across all of the different nodes, and not just from the metrics that they're pulling from their protocol layer, which I'm not fully aware of, but I'm sure that there's things that we can do as P-reps running these test nets to empower the devs. So we should have that conversation more. I don't know if now is the right time, Yeah, let's get into more of this. So log analysis, we need to build queries and dashboards for Elasticsearch. There's Kibana. For our metrics, there's Grafana. And we need to be using all these different things and aggregating them in various ways, and really empowering Mitchell to be able to do a lot of his different workflows, because he can't do double signing protection if he doesn't have logs, and that's just brass tacks. He's not going to be able to do it. Nobody can do it. He needs to have the tools in place, and so that's really what we're trying to do, is build those tools. For testing, we are going to need to run a suite of different tests. This is just a really high level buckets. We're going to need to do some chaos testing where we randomly turn off different nodes. John works for one of the premier, or consults for one of the premier chaos testing suites out there, Gremlin. So I don't know if, John, do you think we could get Gremlin involved in some of this? I don't know if we've talked specifically about this.
Yeah, I mean, we'd have to ask them. I know in the previous conversations I've had with their solutions architect, I was actually trying to get like an enterprise license from an educational perspective, which they had mentioned, hey, you know, we don't really do, and the open source version is just, you can only launch 2 separate attacks. I do know that there are additional packages out there, but I mean, it's worth me engaging their solutions architect again and say, hey, we have a specific use case here. And, you know, seeing if we can get it, just because you can do so many different things with the enterprise package. And I love having the level of support that we need, rather than, you know, pulling in a whole bunch of open source packages from random spots. So
yeah, I don't know if Chaos Monkey is going to cut it. So definitely let's talk about that. But to be clear, I don't know if we said this yet. Chaos testing is where you turn off random nodes in a cluster and just make sure that the cluster can still operate smoothly. So like initially, like if people are running single p-rep nodes, not HA with pacemaker or anything like that, certainly we wouldn't be able to turn that node off without, well, I guess that's a great example, actually. So if we're in testnet, we would want to randomly turn off somebody's p-rep node, which is like a main p-rep, and then we're going to want to see how the network responds by promoting a sub p-rep up into a main p-rep, and see if we can make sure that all the different network level protocols are in place to be able to support that promotion and be able to react appropriately. Load testing, pretty straightforward. We're going to hit it with a package called Locust and a couple different other ones to simulate network traffic to see if we can scale properly. And then penetration testing suites. Shit, this is clearly something that I just threw together because I repeated it over here. I just noticed that. But yeah, we're going to run a lot of different tests. We have a lot that we're already running. So, and then we can talk a little bit more later about how we plan on orchestrating all of that if we have time. Anyways, anything more on this slide? Anybody? No, moving on. Issue tracking. I really want to make a huge point of this, that we really should be having some project management software in place that spans the different teams. I don't know if there's a team out there that wants to volunteer to start to step up to try to do some of this stuff. I think that maybe, if, you know, it depends on the subject matter, it should be divided down. I know that we have like a lot of different strengths in our P-reps, right? Like we have people from finance, right? They're not going to want to engage in, you know, the technical component of our project management. But I'm sure that there's issues that different teams that are not technically savvy are going to want to track as well, like promoting Icon through different channels and different means that way. So I don't know, my personal preference for a lot of this stuff is Jira. We could also, for specific code stuff, GitHub works just fine as well, but maybe we should think about Trello for sort of some of the non-technical stuff. I don't know. Does anybody have any comments or anything they want to voice on how we want to manage this?
So when we say project management software, we're specifically talking about error tracking and who's working on it versus GitHub, where we can actually see, hey, this person, submitted a pull request or are doing something, versus Trello, where you're like, okay, this person has this specific task.
Yeah, so like GitHub is really just for issues. And
Yeah.
there's a Jira plugin that you can get that every single time a GitHub issue gets raised, it feeds forward into Jira that you can then assign more strategically.
Yeah, I think we'd have to have a combination of at least two of them, because they kind of do a different thing. But yeah, I mean, if we're running this operation like a production level team, then yeah, that's got to be part of it.
I'm gonna write a Medium post at the end of this call, summarizing the call. But this is gonna be one of the major points that I want to stress: that teams need to start working in coordination. And there's a lot of issues out there that are just like I really want teams to start being a little bit more proactive about how they're dealing with certain issues, because I can't tell you how many times I've seen in the chat people like say, well, when are the docs going to get updated? When is the Icon Foundation going to give us more guidance on XYZ? And there's a lot of these issues that are just like, man, if you just sort of like not read the docs literally, but read the docs for what they're trying to tell you to do, there's a lot of solutions in place for us to start to manage that kind of stuff. So I'm going to make a big point of that in a Medium post, because we really need to start managing this stuff. And I might be able to volunteer a Jira license, because I do have one hanging out for Jira server that I can give each team a user for, and we can start giving different teams in the top 22. I mean, we got 22 teams that are going to get elected, right? They should have some bandwidth to be able to support some different issues and whatnot. And that's how we're really going to be able to coordinate. So big point of that. We'll raise it up more later, because obviously there's not much more that's going to come from that. Maybe we can have community sprints as well, and potentially a Scrum Master. And we're probably going to want to differentiate between the different types of teams and the different skill sets that people are going to be able to volunteer for, to be able to adopt, we'll be able to champion different areas. But it's a divide and conquer approach that we're going to need to start taking. Docs, this is huge. I really want people to start contributing docs. Oops, that's not it. In the docs, why? Oh, this is not. It's not in there. That's why. In our repo, if you go to these docs over here, in the overview, I really think every team should read this and check this out. So there's a repo that I made called Insight Icon Project Seeds, and I'm telling people to look at this, because if any team makes a repository like this, where all you do is write Markdown, very simple to write Markdown, it renders nice, it looks nice, it's the right way of building docs, right? If you have a repository, you can have folders and everything like that as well if you want to group your docs. But all you need to do is build something like this. It's just this index file right here. Okay, so if any team builds a repository with an index file with a whole bunch of Markdown, you can see your icon DApp reference architecture, right? And then in here, icon DApp reference architecture, right? If you build your repository like this, then just send me the repository. Just tell me, hey, I just put this up, make it public, and just start committing to that. I have in my repo, in here, in docs, I built a CI pipeline that renders a bunch of different repos into one aggregated documentation source. So this documentation source right now is very, I won't say it's bare bones, but like I really want to, like it's aggregated from a lot of different repos. So like in here, Insight Docs, right? I've got in here Insight repository directory, and then Okay, like in here, this content that you're seeing right here is rendered from a completely different repository, right? It's not inside of this repository. So all you need to do is send me your repository with the proper structure in place with that index.rst file. Or like hit me up, I'll walk you through if you have any problems with it, but I'll render it and it'll make it look real nice, and then we can all start sharing documentation. There's a lot, like I said before, there's a lot of pressure being put on the Icon Foundation to get their docs just right. Believe it or not, not all of them speak English, you know, so they're not necessarily all pumping out docs left and right that we can all use, because they're all trying to build docs internally that they can manage. And so, you know, it's an impossible thing for us to ask them to try to just like, you know, maintain multiple copies of docs, one in English, one in Korean, and so on and so forth, right? Like us as a community, we can all step up and be building our own docs, and we absolutely have to be able to evangelize all the different things that we're doing. So like for instance, all these docs right here are coming from another repo, this one right here. And if you see here in docs, for instance, there's like a ton of stuff in this repo. It's just this giant, we'll go through it later. But all these different files right here that we're keeping track of the documentation for our own stuff is all fed off this index.rst. I just maintain this. And then every single night on a CI pipeline, this documentation source gets updated with whatever content. So you just need to give me a repo that looks like this, basically with a index.rst, and this could be documentation for your application as well. This could be like in this case right here, this is not just random documentation, this is documentation that we're using through all of our stuff. And so I don't know, we can talk more about that later. We'll get into like more specifics about how you can render documentation that will be like inline code comments and stuff like that, so you can like document APIs and different things like that. I'm sure you guys, like everybody who's a developer, has used documentation that's rendered from Sphinx. If you haven't heard of it, Sphinx like that. And Sphinx docs. It's this stuff right here. So I've taken care of the hard part, I feel like, with the Sphinx. All you really need to do is write Markdown and one RST index file. And from there, there's just a whole bunch of good documentation that come out of that. Sorry, I droned off on that one for a while, but this is a really important concept that I want to stress to the community, because this is how we're going to get all the docs in one place. Otherwise, it's like different teams maintaining 22 different documentation resources, and it's impossible to navigate them and sort of figure out where everything is. And so when we start to divide the different duties of the different PREP teams, when they are in a position to start evangelizing their different best practices that they're developing and contributing to the community, we're going to need it all in one place. So anyways, I think I hit that one hard enough, but it's so important that we get good documentation in place. Otherwise, nobody knows what you're doing and nobody can follow you and all the rest. So yeah, let's do this. Please get in touch, and I will include your team's docs in here. And you know, I know we're all trying to promote ourselves and everything like that. I think this is a pretty good way to promote yourselves, even though, you know, like if this grows to the point where now we got docs that are being used by dApp developers and stuff like that, that's going to be a great place to sort of, you know, say like, hey, you know, iBriz, you know, handles this, and this is our specific documentation that's going to talk about how to work different things. I don't know. Let me know if you want to get your docs in place. So any questions on that? Anybody? No? I was really hoping this wasn't going to turn into a call where I was just talking the entire time. But, all right, moving on. Infrastructure as code. I think I hit on this before, but just to be very, very clear about why we write infrastructure as code, because there's a lot of node developer. Well, I don't know who else is writing infrastructure as code, but let's just be clear about why we're doing it. Okay, so infrastructure as code is repeatable. We can build in best practices that can be shared. and that's why Insight is doing it. For us to be able to redeploy our best practices for somebody else, it's as simple as sharing a script. And then also it's going to really help out when we're trying to maintain a parallel operation in testnet. Means that we can redeploy a parallel configuration in testnet. Obviously that's important. It's predictable. We know what is going to be deployed because we can see specifically in the code exactly how every single piece of the configuration is deployed. It's all explicit in the way that it is defined. So it's predictable. It's also auditable. We can see exactly what is deployed when we audit it. We can do that through various different ways, not just by looking at the code itself, but then on the back end of it, interpreting different logs to see exactly when something is deployed. We have a record set that shows exactly what was deployed when, and we can trace all of that stuff down. And then the most important concept that I think a lot of people aren't really necessarily familiar with, if you're not from if you don't have a DevOps background, or if you haven't been doing this kind of stuff, the most important concept with all this stuff, and I don't want to lose anybody on this, but is immutability. And it's basically a different way of dealing with infrastructure than how most people are used to. So the common analogy that everybody uses in the industry is this idea of treating infrastructure instead of as pets, but you treat it as cattle. So pets, when they get sick, you would take them to a vet and you would nurse them back to health. It's a similar way that you would deal with nodes in a classical sense, that normally back in the day, you would deploy a node and you would see that it's sick. You would get some different metrics off of that. You would have different monitoring in place and whatnot. And then you would have to SSH into the box, and then you would have to check the logs and maybe change some parameters. But you would really be nursing these different boxes back to health by going into the box and making configuration changes in place. And that's sort of not the way that people do things these days. The modern way of managing and deploying infrastructure is to deal with everything as cattle. So when cattle, when they get sick, you would just, well, sorry for the analogy, but you just bring it down to the slaughterhouse, and then you would raise a new cattle as you see fit. And that's sort of the analogy that people use, because these days when the machine goes wrong, you don't SSH into the box and try to nurse it back to health. You would just destroy the machine and then redeploy it. And then that way you would make configuration changes into the original deployment instead of having to go into the box. Now, that being said, PREP nodes honestly can be treated as pets. They are so important. They're not nodes that we want to have any kind of downtime in whatsoever. Because we're not running multiple different PREP nodes, we might be running an HA setup, but realistically though, we can treat these PREP nodes as pets. We want to make sure that they're treated very, very carefully. But everything else in our deployment, now notice there's, when we go into some of our architecture diagrams later, there's going to be one PREP node and then maybe 10 other nodes around it, sort of supporting it, be it logging, monitoring, different security, things like that. We're really just building in this huge amount of infrastructure around this one PREP node to make sure that it's running properly, right? All that other infrastructure is cattle. The PREP can be treated as sort of like a pet. I just want to go over that to sort of give a baseline knowledge of how everybody should know, be thinking about a lot of this stuff. Any questions? I am talking this entire time. I'm hoping that other people can sort of jump in.
Yeah, I think you're good, Rob. I just want to call the attention that you got roughly 4 more minutes.
Oh, I scheduled this call for 2 hours. So
2 hours. Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if people are going to want to pay attention that long, but I mean, I just think that these are important points. Tell me if I'm getting off topic at all.
Well, how many more slides do you have in this deck?
I mean, like I said, I can talk for hours. So I don't know if we want to save this for another call. How many people do we have on the call right now? I can't even.
We have 11 participants.
Oh man, I was hoping for that. We'd have more engagement for the other teams. I know other people were going to say that they were going to tune in later, and all this is going to be on YouTube. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe we can save a lot of the other stuff for another call. I just want to drill into a few important points, I guess, on all this. Let me skip some of the high level stuff. Components, nodes, configurations. We just drill through this. I don't want to take up everybody's time. let's see if we can end this in maybe like 15, 20 minutes. John, it's like, you know, you're getting up at 4 in the morning or something like that. So
Yeah.
let's wrap this up and I'll throw it up on YouTube, and then we can schedule this for the next weekly call. And maybe we can get more teams engaged in trying to actually talk these things through a little bit more, and project management in place so that we can actually plan and build out different duties and things like that. The different configurations, we're building a lot of different configurations. Maybe another call we'll talk about how we do that, and we can walk through our repo, considering how many people we have on the call, as in not that many, and we're sort of early in the development with a lot of this stuff. I don't think it's worth it for us to get into too much detail. But one of the main points that I want to raise about all of this stuff is that there's a lot of different ways of writing Terraform. I've been writing Terraform for about 3 years now, and there's this common struggle that people find when they're building Terraform setups, is that it's very easy to build really long, sprawling Terraform files. And Terraform, just to be clear, is the tool that we use to provision infrastructure. It's the industry standard. Everybody uses it. There's really nothing else out there besides something called Pulumi that I want to get into at all that is professional. CloudFormation, avoid that at all costs, if you're familiar with that. Anyways, I make all of my Terraform modular, and that way I can share different code components and then reconfigure them in different ways. We'll go through more of the reasons for that in another video. But what that supports is, when we make everything modular, is that we can reconfigure our deployments in all kinds of different ways, and we don't need to rebuild all the different scripts. We can just sort of hook up different modules together and deploy them, and then we can get different features and maintain different features that way. The main point is we can reconfigure or stack in lots of different ways. And so what I'm planning on doing is building at least 3 different deployments. And this is at least. It's actually really easy to build even more than that, and to implement different features and different firewalls and different things like that. But from a high level, we basically have 3 different kinds of node configurations. The first one's just the simple one, and that's just with like a citizen node, or optionally a prep node. It might just even, for some people, they're not even going to be preps. They don't even want to be a prep, sub prep, or anything like that. They just want to gain the rewards or whatever from running a citizen node, right? So that'll be just a very, very basic infrastructure for anyone that anyone who is competent enough to run a shell, they'll be able to run this simple deployment. For the next one is supporting. I'm sort of thinking about this as for node operators that are not necessarily the most technically savvy, not necessarily the ones who are really going to be contributing much to the ecosystem. We really just want to run a basic node. I'm thinking more, well, not to the ecosystem. I take that back. They're contributing to the ecosystem, but not necessarily in a technical manner. And that's just like the basic sort of citizen node with DDoS protection in front of their prep, all the Nginx reverse proxy, rate limiting kind of stuff, if anybody's been drilling into that.
Hey Rob, we got a question in the chat.
Yeah, what's up?
The question comes from Emery. He says, "Hey, I remember you saying that testnet will be available Monday. What's the situation on that?"
Testnet available Monday. I'm not sure. That's more of an icon thing. I was hoping that some icon people were going to join the call. I'm just running a node. I think he might be mentioning that I'll have a one-click deployment ready for testnet. And yes, I will have a one-click ready. I'll demo that at the end of, if we have, I should really end this presentation soon and just do a quick demo. And it takes a while to run the demo, so I'll do it right after this slide. But yes, I will have a one-click deployment, and I'll show you how to run it momentarily. And then we'll have an advanced configuration, and that's for node operators who want to engage in building best practices. So people who are really technically savvy, who are capable of running just technical people, because there's going to be some more advanced stuff that's harder to walk people through. Like having to deal with, like, you're going to have PGP keys and Keybase set up, and you're going to need to unseal a vault cluster properly and be able to engage in various governance that is proper in being able to handle very modern advanced setups, right? Whereas like the supporting sort of middle tier infrastructure, it's sort of like get your key store onto the PREP, which is your most sensitive piece of information, and just store your SSH keys locally and just sort of deal with it on your own, there's easier ways of dealing with things. So anyways, long story short, there's going to be sort of 3 tiers, okay? And hoping to onboard people on every single level. And I'm assuming that there's going to be some of the P reps out there that are more engaged with the community, more engaged with sort of the broader ecosystem developments and stuff like that, and some of the dApp developers and stuff like that. They're not necessarily going to be capable of running some of the advanced setups, and nor really do they need to. There's no real reason to have them run some of these larger, like a Kubernetes cluster and some of the advanced testing suites that we're developing and stuff like that. So anyways, different tiers for people to engage in and whatnot. And later on, we can go through what those are, and we can go through on another call. Let's just do this. On another call, there'll be some network diagrams that I built. Not in here, it's in the background, but it doesn't really matter. Yeah, let's just do a demo. How about that? And then just wrap it up. Okay. I am in a random directory right now, and I want to run this so-called one-click deployment. So what am I going to do? You're going to run this command. You're going to need to pip install cookie cutter first off. Like that. And not like that, not cookie cutter, like that. So, sorry, I'm losing it. Pip install it, and then from there, you're going to run a command that is actually a lot simpler than this. You're going to run a command that's going to be the repo that I have. So in here, you're going to find my repo. If I can spell. Okay, so cookie cutter, and then this. This is the command you're going to need to run. And if you run this, it's going to download a file, and then it's going to ask you a bunch of questions. So what's your environment? I'm going to call this one stage. Why not? You're going to pick a region, and this is all AWS right now. We're going to later build this into GCP. There's a whole bunch of conversations that I want to have with some of these GCP guys about how we want to handle that. Realizing that this call is probably incredibly introductory, actually, and we're going to really want to try and get more of these P reps kind of onto these calls, and we can actually start talking together about what we're doing. Pick a region, and then you're going to put in your account ID, and you're going to put the absolute path to your SSH key. Okay, you're going to type all that out, whatever. And then your root domain, subdomain, different things like that. How you handle your DNS records. We'll talk about that later. Right now, because we're all operating on L4, as in IP addresses, we're not really dealing with domains. But I do have scripts that are going to automate, like, getting an SSL cert and setting up different buckets and static content that you'll need to be able to run different websites and to be able to support different things. There's a lot of different stuff that's going to go into those domains. Right now, it's you don't even need that. Pick your corporate IP and then a zone, and then what you're going to get is, we called it stage. You're going to get all these files right here. Okay, and so that's what this command right here, cookie cutter, and my repo, it generated this giant repo structure right here. This is actually not giant. This is incredible. This is like the most basic This is not even the most basic of the different configurations that I showed before. This is incredibly simple, just sort of proof of concept at this point, really, just to make sure that I can deploy a bunch of nodes and security groups and things like that, networks and whatnot. So I'm not going to go in here because I didn't fill out my information properly. If you remember up here in here, my account ID is not 123456, right? So I'm just going to go. I don't want to expose any information. I know I have Dev 8 working. I know I have did Dev 7. So I just had this one running before, and this is like an exact replica of what you will get when you cd into the directory. And you're going to get a bunch of scripts. Specifically, you're going to get this apply.sh script, and you're going to get this destroy.sh script. Before you can run these scripts, you're going to need to install some software. First off, you're going to need Terraform. The best way to install that is with this program called TF Switch. Okay, install Terraform, and the best way to install Terraform is with TF Switch. If you go to my repo, I think I include a link to TF Switch. Yeah, right here, TF Switch and TG Switch. These are the best tools out there I've found to install Terraform and TerraGrunt. Okay, so you're going to need to install two pieces of software, Terraform and TerraGrunt, and you're going to need to fill out these options properly. If you didn't fill them out properly, or you want to edit them, all they are, and I'm not going to show you any of my sensitive information, but it's going to be in this account.tfrs, and that's like your sensitive identifying information that's going to link to your account. Okay, so recap: you have Terraform installed, you have TerraGrunt installed, and I think you need JQ as well to run certain kinds of configurations. Right now, you don't need it. That's ancillary. You don't really know that. Okay, so I showed you the repo structure. We'll drill into that in another call. There's a lot of best practices baked into this. To give you a little perspective, because I know I got some pushback about using this this tool called TerraGrunt. TerraGrunt right here, check it out. This is the leading wrapper for Terraform, and Terraform, if you remember, is the leading way to deploy infrastructure on the cloud or anywhere for that matter. You can use Terraform on bare metal, which is a lot of people don't realize that, but yeah, I've got an 8-node cluster in my laundry room, and I pixie boot that, and I use Terraform for that even, you know. So Terraform can be used for a ton of different applications. It's really one of the most underappreciated tools out there, I would say, in DevOps. I mean, it's not underappreciated, but it's a really big deal technology, right? Okay, so we're in this directory. All we've done is run one command and filled out a couple different configurations. We've installed TerraGrunt, we've installed Terraform, and we have keys to our AWS account. Okay, that's the secret access key and the key ID, right? They're pretty standard things. Whenever you build a user in AWS, you have a user in there, and you would just add user, and I just create an admin, and then when I'm done with it, I just destroy that user. And this is just for staging, so I don't really have this, but in my production environment, I don't have any users that have access to do anything really, except for the bare minimum. I'm droning off. Let's just deploy some stuff. So I've got my keys exported, and I did that my way. For me, I export my profile, AWS profile. That's the name of my profile right there, and you can see my profile end up right here. So let's just do it. So then you're going to do the apply.sh, and you're just going to watch it all happen, because that's the whole one-click nature of the whole entire thing. I think we've ran one command to export a profile, and we ran one command to generate all the configs, and then we filled out some information right here. If you look at this repo, there's actually a simpler way of doing this, where you can write a configuration file and then run it from there. But now this is all working in the background. You can see right here, we're running our VPC. It's all bootstrapping itself right there, a whole bunch of stuff. And if we just keep on watching it for the next 5 minutes or so, it's just going to go through and it's going to probably run several hundred API calls and just start bootstrapping all the necessary infrastructure onto AWS. So we can watch some of that start to happen in the background. And so like inside here in EC2, we'll go into VPC, that launched. And so we can see it right here in the VPCs. It's not there. Oh, it's in Ohio. You can pick your region, so we can run this in whatever region we want. So here's a VPC, and then we can zoom over into EC2. Start to see some of these EC2 instances pop up. I haven't hit yet. And what's happening right now is it's setting up things like your SSH key, like your security groups, all that kind of stuff. And so it's gonna take a minute to run all this stuff, but basically what it's doing is going in, and this is our main repo that we're working out of, and just sort of give you a little background context of what's happening between all of here. What we're doing is we have this big development directory going on right now, and underneath here we have a similar setup to what you saw out of the cookie cutter right here. And so you'll see like a lot of the same similarities. Oops, computers. It's because of the zoom, it's slowing me down. Come on. Jeez. All right. I'm not going to move many windows around anymore. But long story short is we're building everything into this development folder right here. And then as we build good configurations that work together through our own little apply.sh scripts, we take the necessary configuration files and we promote them into our environments. And then at the end, we sort of freeze them into a cookie cutter. And so there's a lot of little stuff that goes in behind that from there. This is a super simplified sort of, explanation of what's happening underneath the hood. But what we're really trying to do is build like all the different advanced features that we want into this one repo right here, and then distribute them to the community in the most easy to adopt format possible. And my computer crashed, or at least my shell crashed. That's okay. We can go back in here, and this is not dev. If this happens to you, hopefully you're not running Zoom and it doesn't crash your computer like it did mine. And you can just run your apply.sh script again. It might get kind of screwed up because there was a lock. There is some finicky business with some of this. It's not like, first off, my script didn't crash my computer. Zoom did, I feel like, or something, because there was a little bit too much going on or something like that. I'm not exactly sure. But you can hit the apply.sh multiple times. It's a terrible demo now that thing's broke. Man, that's a little embarrassing. You have to export the profile properly, and then you can hit this apply.sh again, and this should work. That should have gone smoother, but normally you don't flip around a bunch of windows and it crashes your shell during a demo because Zoom is holding down some weird resource. I'm not exactly sure, but this works. I'm just gonna say that much. It normally works. So anyways, and we could have seen back here what was going on. I don't know if it got to any of the EC2 instances. They're actually the last thing to run, but it should have gotten through to some of the other stuff like the security groups. Yeah, so it started populating some security groups, and you get your rules. Raju, if you're listening, I got the Lambda function working today. So see here how it has for the port range, for the open ports, for the gRPC ports, how it's open everywhere. I got this now to the point where it's going to run a function on a cron job on a timer, so that it pulls the PREP node list from an endpoint, and then automatically populates the security group rules to make sure that they're restricted to only nodes that are trusted within our network. So it's not like the end solution. I want to talk about that with other people and talk about firewalls and stuff like that. But it's definitely better than having your port completely, port 7100 open to the whole world. Really, we're going to be moving this over to L7, so I don't see my solution really, being used for hopefully not that long. Hopefully, we're sort of transitioning away from a solution where you need to be able to configure your security group rules like this. But for now, I think this is a good approach, because if a PREP gets kicked out of the network and another PREP comes up, then that means that every single person in the network needs to manually modify their security group rules to be able to be inclusive of that new PREP. That's a pain in the ass, and at least Insight's not going to have to do that because we built a function to automate all of that. So anyways, kind of a shaky demo. I was hoping it was going to work right the first time, but it works, trust me. And if it doesn't, hit me up and I'll help you. I'm trying to onboard as many people on the community as possible to this stuff, because this is best practices baked into one script, and we can really start to share things that, let's just say that it would be extremely painful to have to redo manually and do through the console. How should I say this? Every single professional software company uses this tool. I'll just say that, or uses a tool very, 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 very similar like this. You know, even Google, they're not. I don't even know if they're building their own CloudFormation equivalent. Azure has Resources Manager, but they're promoting Terraform. The only people that don't promote Terraform is AWS, because they're so married to their CloudFormation tool. So anyways, I don't want to get into technology justifications too much. Yeah, I don't know. Anybody got any comments, questions?
Yeah, Rob, this is John. Yeah, maybe on Friday we could talk about the Terraform module stuff. I'd like to dig in a little bit deeper into there. So.
Yeah, I got it. Well, the Lambda function are you talking about?
No. The modularity.
Yeah, the modularity. Absolutely. I really like talking about modularity, and please, I'm really welcoming any kind of feedback on that. Yeah, whenever you're writing Terraform, you always are presented with a situation where you have to determine how much modularity you want in Terraform. And so TerraGrunt was built by the guy who literally wrote the book on Terraform Up and Running. And I had the opportunity to show him my icons, mine and icons, TerraGrunt deployment, not this one here, but actually a previous one that I developed a couple months ago. And he signed off on my general structure of how I was putting it together, but I don't think we really drilled in that much as far as the modularity of how much we want to group things together. So I'm very open to feedback, though, on anything along those lines. I'm generally just open to feedback, but that in particular, I'm always thinking about how much I want to group my different components and stuff like that. Cool. Anybody else?
No, I think we're good, man.
All right, I guess I'll post this to YouTube. I hope that more people show up next time. Yeah, hopefully people got something out of this, and really, like, I can't emphasize the point from the beginning of the call enough. Like, we need to be working together on all of this stuff. Insight is really happy to be leading the charge on building all this infrastructure as code development stuff. Really happy to be building best practices that other people can be sharing along the community. I can't stress enough that we don't necessarily want to have a PREP group that's just a bunch of code monkeys. We need to have well-diverse, diverse sets of backgrounds and everything like that. But we also need to make sure that we, 100%, our top priority, number one, is building a robust network and making sure that we can scale into dApps and everything like that. And so that's priority number one, and that should be priority number one for every single P-Rep. And so if that's the case, we need to start working together. That's just brass tacks that needs to happen. So anyways, hopefully more people join next time, and we can start figuring out how we can do that.
Cool. Rob, as always, man, definitely appreciate the time.
Yeah, thanks for staying up late. I put up a poll that determined the time that we are now meeting right now at 11, and like 15 people responded. And so I don't know, hopefully more people, we'll put up another poll, and we'll just try to get more people on this call. I got to hear from more other teams and see what they're doing. And
yeah, I mean, if we're recording it and posting it online, then, maybe we can even, switch the time and then just kind of funnel in questions like ad hoc after that. So
yeah, I work 80 hours a week, so I'm not worried about trying to figure out a time to accommodate.
Well, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get you down to about 40. So
we talked about this already, man. You can't get me to stop working, man. You can't.
No, I didn't say stop, just reduce.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
All right, folks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cool.
Right.
On that note, talk soon.
Bye-bye.